The projector hums, the room smiles, and his account balance vanishes before the doors close. I stand just off the control table in the hotel ballroom, fingers resting on the projector remote, like it's warmer than plastic, the kind of warmth that comes from knowing exactly when something will break. Not if, and watching a bartender hesitate before sliding a card back across polished wood. The room is dressed for ease-linen glass, low laughter, and I let myself blend into the edges, present tense, stretching thin as I track faces' exits and the rhythm of the doors as security cycles them on a countdown. Someone says, "We're good for another round," and someone else laughs too loudly, and the sound folds over the hum until it becomes part of the same machine. I tell myself my immediate goal is simple: confirm the first consequence without being seen, without changing the temperature yet, without letting my breathing mark me. The remote's red light blinks once patient, while the projector throws a waiting blue across the screen like a held breath. "Can I help you?" a server asks, eyes flicking to my badge and then away. "I'm fine," I say, and it's true, in the way that procedures are true before people touch them. Across the room, he leans on the bar with a confidence that belongs to yesterday, wrist-relaxed smile, angled for witnesses, and when his phone lights his cheek, he keeps smiling, a performance trained to survive applause. "It'll go through," he says to no one in particular, and the bartender nods. Trained optimism, trained patience. I count my breaths because counting is how I stay inside the frame. The venue smells like citrus polish and electricity, and I can hear the doors thump as they test lock for the first time. "We're closing in 5, eh?" Voice announces over the ambient track. Not the mic yet, just air, just a courtesy. A woman near me whispers, "Did you see the guest list?" And another replies, "Everyone important is here," which is almost funny if you think importance is static. I shift my weight, and the remote clicks softly, a sound so small it feels like a lie, and the click reminds me that present tense is a tool. Everything that matters is happening now, because I said it to. "Lauren," someone says behind me, a question trying to become a greeting. I don't turn. In a minute I answer, and the minute tightens. The bar light flickers harmless probably, and the bartender clears his throat. "I need to try that again," he says, voice careful, and a ripple of impatience passes like weather. "What do you mean again?" he asks, smile still in place, eyes sharp now. Sometimes the network the bartender begins and stops when the card reader chirps a refusal that's too loud to ignore. "That's impossible," he says, and I feel the room pivot without knowing why. "Sir," the bartender says and lowers his voice, "it's not going through." "Run it," he says. "Run it." A man 2 stools down mutters awkward, and laughter tries and fails to find a home. I tell myself not to look yet because looking is a signal and signals are expensive. "Do you have another card?" the bartender asks. "No," he says, clipped, "run it." Someone near the doors checks a watch. Doors and 2 security murmurs to each other, professional neutral. "Hey," he says to the bartender, and the smile is gone now. This is a mistake. The projector hum deepens, as if agreeing to keep a secret a little longer. I can feel the room's attention collect like dust in a beam of light, the way people sense a turn before they understand it. "Everything okay?" a woman asks. Not to me, not to him, to the air that's begun to thin. "Fine," he says, and taps his phone, which does nothing helpful. "Fine," he repeats, and the repetition costs him. "We're closing," security says again, louder this time, and the doors answer with a heavier lock. The bartender slides the card back with 2 fingers. "I'm sorry," he says, and the apology is a line break. I turn then, not fully just enough to let my face be another face, and he catches my eye without recognition, because recognition would require a story he doesn't have yet. "Is this a joke?" he asks the room, and the room refuses to answer. We can sort this. Someone offers a friend or a colleague, the difference blurring. Sort what he snaps, and then quieter Lauren. He says my name like it's a door he expects to open. "Not now," I say, and it lands because I don't raise my voice. The projector's blue washes the screen, waiting for content, waiting for permission, and I think about thresholds, about how light decides what is visible when access changes hands. The remote warms in my palm as the room's smile slips and the first lock answers the last lie. "Please step aside," security says, and the sentence is a line drawn clean. "You can't be serious," he says, and then to me, "What did you do?" The question comes late, but it's honest in the way panic can be honest. "We'll discuss it," I say, and the future tense is deliberate. A server whispers. Phones and people glance down. Reflex 1,000 small screens ready to remember. The doors test lock again, final this time, and the hum becomes a promise. I don't press anything yet. I let the present do the work it's meant to do. Before the doors release, the screen waits, and every exit learns my timing. I'm Lauren Whitmore, 32, an operations analyst from Charlotte, North Carolina. Back then, before the locks learned my timing, the world still felt shared, and the past opens like a room I thought we both owned. We were standing in a venue lobby weeks earlier, early light cutting the floor in uneven bands, one doorway brighter than the other, and I remember noticing how the folded guest list rested in his hand like a passport he never questioned. He joked with the coordinator, said, "Put everyone important up front," and I watched the way importance slid so easily from his mouth, the way access had become invisible to him, because it always worked. My immediate goal that day was small and domestic. Confirm seating, confirm timing, confirm that the night would pass without friction, nothing heroic, nothing strategic, just the quiet labor of keeping systems smooth. "You're overthinking it," he told me when I paused at the threshold between lobby and ballroom light, spilling unevenly across the doorway, as if deciding who belonged where. "Relax." I smiled, because smiling is cheaper than arguing, and because I didn't yet know how much that smile would cost. He moved ahead, the guest list tapping his thigh, and I followed, noticing for the first time how often he walked through doors without waiting for anyone else. "Everything's set," the coordinator said, and I nodded, trusting the word set the way you trust gravity. Later alone, I caught myself standing in that same doorway again, watching light split the floor one side, warm, one side dim, and I felt a small, irrational discomfort that I couldn't name yet. He came up behind me, kissed my cheek, said, "You good?" And I said, "Yeah," because I believed it. There were signs I filed away without labels, the way his phone went face down, the way he took calls outside, the way his laughter arrived a beat late, like a sound cue missing its mark. "Don't start," he said once when I asked a neutral question about timing, and the sharpness surprised us both. "I'm just asking," I replied, and the asking felt suddenly risky. We shared accounts, then shared calendars, shared assumptions, and access felt mutual in the way air feels mutual, until someone closes a window. One night after everyone left, I stayed behind to help stack chairs. The guest list abandoned on a table names creased and recreased, and I noticed a mark beside one entry that didn't match the rest. "It's nothing," he said when I mentioned it, folding the list again tighter this time. "You always see patterns." I laughed because pattern seeing was my job, and because love trains you to doubt your own instruments. The doorway light flickered as the building powered down, and for a second the room felt divided into a loud and not, and I told myself it was just the bulbs. "Come on," he said already halfway through the door, and I followed, carrying the quiet sense that something had shifted, even if I couldn't prove it yet. The doorway glowed unevenly, and I stepped through without knowing which side would lock later. In the days after that uneven doorway, the past tightened into procedures, and I learned how suspicion sounds when it stops being a feeling and becomes a system. I was in the venue's back office past tense, settling into my shoulders as I waited for Marcus Reed to finish a call. The venue keycard cool and weighty in my palm, its matte edge worn smooth by people who never question where it opens. My immediate goal was precise verify access without alerting anyone who believed access was theirs by default. "You're early," Marcus said, glancing at the clock on the wall, and then at me. "I like margins," I replied, "because margins keep you safe when stories don't." He slid the terminal toward me and said, "Don't linger." And that was the first cost being seen near a system I wasn't supposed to touch. The office smelled like toner and old coffee, the hum of servers steady enough to sound like reassurance if you didn't know better. "What exactly are you looking for?" he asked. "Door entries," I said. "Specific ones." "That's not casual," he said, and I met his eyes. "Neither is sharing accounts," I said, and he didn't smile. The keycard chimed when I tapped at a soft permission, and the log bloomed on screen in neat rows that pretend neutrality. I scanned for the anomaly I'd half hoped wouldn't exist my finger-tracking columns until it stopped where it shouldn't. "There," I said quietly. Marcus leaned in. "That door?" he asked. That time I nodded, and the room felt smaller. The entry showed a valid swipe for a restricted corridor, tagged with a short ref code AX7 recorded at the venue entrance, a place that requires clearance I knew he didn't have. "Who's assigned?" Marcus asked. "No one," I said. "Not him." "You sure?" he pressed. "Read the permissions," I said, and my voice didn't rise. He scrolled, frowned. "That badge color isn't authorized," he said. "Exactly," I replied, and the word felt like a latch. "We need to log why you're seeing this," Marcus said, already reaching for the clipboard. "Log it," I agreed, knowing the log would become a witness if I let it. The cost escalated when a junior coordinator poked her head in. "Is this a good time?" she asked, eyes flicking to the screen. 5 minutes, Marcus said, and the door closed too softly to be comforting. "If this is wrong," he said, lowering his voice, "it gets messy." "It already is," I said, and that was the truth I could afford. I took a photo of the screen with my phone, careful to catch the ref code and the location line without the time of day blinking too bright, careful not to include faces. "Don't email that," Marcus said. "I won't," I said, and didn't say why. When I stepped back into the corridor, the light cut the floor cleanly, and I watched a group pass through the brighter side without noticing the seam. He texted then, "Where are you?" and I felt the risk sharpen. "Working," I replied, which was accurate enough to survive scrutiny. We met later in the parking structure, concrete echoing every word like it wanted to remember. "You're acting strange," he said, leaning against his car with the confidence of someone whose door's always open. "You're imagining patterns again," he added, smiling, and the smile tried to do the work of proof. "Your badge is blue," I said, not looking at him. "Mine clears this corridor." "Don't pretend," he laughed. "Say that again. Your title is analyst, not mine," he said, needle sharp, and the insult landed because it used my job like a measurement. "Titles don't grant doors," I said. "Access does." "You checking up on me now?" He asked the word checking, trying to sound playful. "I'm confirming," I said. "There's a difference. You always need receipts," he said. "I need logs," I corrected. He stepped closer. "You think I can't go where I want. I think the camera contradicts you," I said, and that was my first mistake naming contradiction out loud. His jaw tightened. "You're out of line," he said. "Read the clause out loud," I replied, and heard my own steadiness surprise him. A car alarm chirped somewhere, a false emergency, and he glanced around like witnesses might be currency. "This is nothing," he said. "That entry doesn't mean what you think. It means someone used a door without permission," I said. "It means timing matters." He scoffed. "You don't even know when," he said. I didn't answer because knowing when wasn't the point yet. The venue keycard warmed in my hand as if to argue otherwise, and I closed my fingers around it, feeling the threshold it represented. Later alone, I replayed the log on my phone. The ref code small and precise. The location line unambiguous, the fact of it heavier than the words we'd thrown. I weighed whether to tell Rachel yet, whether to escalate before the pattern finished revealing itself, and decided to wait one more turn to let the system catch him doing what he assumed was invisible. The keycard chimed again in my memory as the log refused to align with his smile. That night, he texted dinner, and I wrote back, "Running late," which was the truest thing I could say. I filed the image where it would stay quiet, told myself to move like procedure, not pain, and went to bed listening for the sound of doors I hadn't locked yet. The mismatch sat between us, small as a code, heavy as a door that only opens once. The first public scene arrived the way storms do when you've already read the pressure charts loud only because people pretend surprise matters. We were back in the venue, past tense, thick with anticipation, the wireless mic resting on the edge of the stage, like an invitation no one wanted to accept, and my immediate goal was containment. Keep the room intact long enough to let the truth surface on its own terms. The ballroom was bright faces, readable phones already loose in hands, and I could feel Marcus Reed's presence by the doors, posture-neutral eyes working the room in practiced arcs. 5 minutes, he murmured to me as I passed, not looking like he was talking to anyone. "Plenty," I said, and meant for the word to sound casual. He stood near the control rack where the CCTV feed could be routed to a monitor, with a thumb and a code bound by protocol and time window, the limitation that made everything sharper. "We're ready when you are," a coordinator said, gesturing at the mic. "Not yet," I replied, and the refusal landed softly enough to be polite. Across the room he laughed with a group, the sound pitched for witnesses, and when his phone buzzed he ignored it, choosing performance over information. "Can we speed this up?" Someone called impatience, wearing a smile. "We're on schedule," Marcus said into his earpiece, and the words were true in a way that mattered. I stepped closer to the control table, letting my presence be noticed just enough to anchor the moment. "Is there a problem?" he asked me. Finally, voice pitched low but carrying. "We'll address it," I said. "Address what?" he pressed. "Read the clause out loud," I replied, and a few heads turned at the firmness of it. "What clause?" he scoffed. "The one about restricted corridors," I said, and watched confusion ripple. "You're embarrassing yourself," he said, needle line precise. "Your badge is blue." Mine clears. "Your badge is blue," Marcus said, not raising his voice. "Mine controls the cameras." The sentence moved the room from curiosity to attention. A woman near the aisle lifted her phone. "Hey," someone whispered, "what's happening?" The screen by the stage flickered as Marcus keyed the feed, and the CCTV clip came up grainy, then sharp, a hallway at the venue entrance marked by a small placard everyone recognized. The safe fields were there, if you knew how to read them, the entrance label in the corner, the ref code ticking in the metadata bar, and the cost of getting it had been time I could feel counting down in my jaw. "That's not," he began, then stopped when the footage showed a familiar shoulder turning through a door that shouldn't open for him. Laughter died. Silence did its work. "This is edited," he said louder now. "Run it again," someone said, not kindly. "Read the time," he snapped at Marcus. "It's within the window," Marcus replied. "The camera contradicts you." The mic squealed softly as a coordinator adjusted levels, the sound slicing the air. "Turn it off," he said to no one in particular. "We're done." "We are not," I said, and took the mic before anyone could decide for me. "This is a verification," I told the room. "Not an accusation." The phrasing mattered. "You're doing this here," he hissed close enough that I could smell the citrus polish on his jacket. "You planned this," he said, and the word planned tried to make me small. "I followed procedure," I said. "Procedure plans itself." A man near the back muttered, "Wow," and someone else said, "Let her finish." The witness wave moved laughter to silence, to the scrape of chairs, as people shifted for a better view. "You don't have proof," he said, grasping. "We have footage," Marcus said, "and logs. Logs aren't people," he shot back. "People are watching," I replied, and felt the room agree. The mic feedback settled into a clean channel, the stage lights bright and unforgiving, and I thought about doorways, about who stands on which side when the light turns white. He leaned toward me. "You think you've won," he whispered. "I think the room has learned something," I said, and handed the mic back before the moment could tilt toward spectacle. Security shifted by the doors, a subtle choreography, and the first door latch clicked heavier than before. The CCTV froze on the frame where the door opened for him, the image refusing to blink away. The mic squealed once as the footage held, and the room learned how loud proof can be. People began talking at once, phones raised now without shame, and I felt the cost register as heat along my spine. "This isn't over," he said, stepping back, eyes searching for exits that had grown narrower. "No," I agreed. As the door latch answered, the stage locked into focus, and the countdown became public. After the room emptied and the lights softened, the pressure didn't leave with the witnesses. It followed me into the quieter corridors where consequences learn to breathe. Past tense steadied me as I stood near the service desk, the security wristband snug against my skin, its plastic edge catching light every time I moved my hand, and my immediate goal narrowed to verification. Without spectacle, confirm the next consequence before anyone could frame it as theater. My phone vibrated with a bank alert that didn't announce itself loudly, just a soft insistence that something had shifted beneath the surface. I stepped aside back to a column and read the message once, then again, because numbers lie less when you force them to repeat. "You okay?" Marcus asked, passing with a cart. "Working," I said, and he nodded, accepting the word like a credential. The alert showed a masked account ending in D82, flagged for a declined transfer attempt, routed through a partner terminal. I recognized the location tag, generic enough to protect privacy, but specific enough to place the attempt inside the same window as the footage. The logic fracture arrived clean and cold. If access had been denied publicly, then the attempt shouldn't exist privately, unless someone was scrambling faster than they could hide. "This can't be right," he said when I showed him the screen, voice low. "It's right," I replied. "It's just inconvenient." "If this goes on record," he began. "It already is," I said, and felt the weight of it settle. The wristband beeped softly. As I crossed a threshold I'd crossed 100 times, the sound suddenly louder in my head. He found me near the coat check, posture defensive, now eyes scanning for allies like exits. "What did you do?" He asked the same question as before, thinner this time. "I confirmed," I said. "You froze it," he accused, and the accusation tried to sound like proof. "I followed policy," I replied. Read the clause out loud. He snapped close enough that the word clause felt like a dare. "The room should hear it," I said, and watched him flinch at the idea of witnesses returning. "You're playing games," he said, needle line sharp. "Your badge is blue. Mine is cleared." "Your badge is blue," I said, calm as a checklist, "and the account won't move." He laughed brittle. "That alert doesn't mean anything," he said. "It means the system refused you," I replied. "Systems don't refuse," he said. "They comply." "Only when permitted," I said, and the sentence closed a door. A woman behind the counter looked up, eyes flicking between us, and I felt the cost register as attention I hadn't planned to buy. "We can talk about this later," he said, softer now, offering time like a favor. "Later costs more," I said. The alert chimed again, a confirmation. This time the masked digits steady, the location unchanged, and the fracture widened into certainty. "You're making a mistake," he said, stepping back, recalibrating. "You signed the log earlier than this," I replied. "The camera contradicts you." He opened his mouth, then closed it, and the silence did the work words couldn't. The wristband pressed into my skin, as if to remind me where I was allowed to stand, and I realized the internal break wasn't grief. It was the moment I stopped hoping for a private repair. The alert settled into my hand like a verdict, and the logic refused to heal. He turned away, phone already up, fingers moving fast, and I let him go because chasing would cheapen the proof. I texted Rachel a single line, "We have movement," and she replied with a dot that meant receipt, nothing more. The corridor lights dimmed to overnight levels, doorways cutting the floor into clean sections, and I walked through the brighter side without looking back. As the wristband chimed, the quiet learned what denial sounds like. By the time the sealed legal envelope entered my hands, the past had learned to speak in contradictions instead of apologies. We met in Rachel Kim's office after hours past tense tightening around the edges of the room, the envelope heavy with the seriousness that paper earns when it's been waiting for the right moment. My immediate goal was precision bind timing to access tightly enough that excuses would collapse under their own weight. "We don't escalate without alignment," Rachel said, tapping the envelope against her desk. "Alignment is all we have," I replied. She slid an internal email across to me, ref code L9Q stamped in the header, and pointed to the timestamp. "Read it," she said. The message authorized a routine check, nothing dramatic sent from an address he controlled, but the send time sat wrong against the access window we'd already logged. "That can't be," I said, and felt the doorway image sharpen in my head, light brightening on one side while the other stayed dim. "It can," Rachel replied, "if the system was told to remember the wrong minute." The email's location tag matched the back office, the same corridor whose door he shouldn't have opened, and the contradiction tightened like a knot. You pull to see if it's real. If this goes public, she said, we need it clean. It will be, I said, before the doors close. Rachel nodded once. Limitation acknowledged. We needed one more corroboration to place authority on standby without tipping him off. When I left her office, the hallway lights flickered as maintenance cycled power, and the doorway ahead of me glowed brighter than the one behind the split so clean it felt instructional. He called while I was in the elevator. We need to talk, he said, voice smooth, rehearsed. We will, I replied. Read the clause out loud, he snapped. The clause doesn't fix time, I said. What are you accusing me of? Nothing, I answered. I'm confirming. The elevator chimed doors opening to a lobby that smelled like polish and impatience. At the venue later, Marcus met me by the control rack clipboard tucked under his arm. You're pushing the window, he murmured. I know, I said. Hold it. We can't forever, he replied. And that was the truth that made clocks dangerous. The email lived in my phone. Now header clean ref code, clear the send time, refusing to agree with the access log we'd already secured. When I showed it to Marcus, he exhaled. That's a problem, he said. It's the problem, I replied. He glanced toward the doors. Security can keep them, he said. Briefly. Briefly is enough, I said. He texted his supervisor, not naming names, just ceding readiness, and the act felt like setting a trap with a calendar instead of a rope. He arrived then, late on purpose, confidence rebuilt like a costume. You're really doing this, he asked, eyes flicking to the envelope in my hand. I'm following procedure, I said. You always hide behind procedure, he said, needle line sharp. Say it again, your title is analyst, not mine. Read the header, I said, and turned my screen so he couldn't miss the timestamp. Out loud. He leaned in, frowned. That's normal, he said too fast. The email went out before I arrived. The camera contradicts you, Marcus said quietly. And the door logs do too. The room stilled the way rooms do when timing fails to agree with stories. I felt the motif echo in my chest doorways, brightening as timestamps stopped agreeing, and understood that the system was finally ready to speak for itself. The envelope warmed as the timestamps refused to align, and the doorway learned which side to light. He laughed once, brittle. You think this proves anything? It proves when I said. And when decides who's allowed. Rachel's text arrived standby authorized. The words were small and absolute. I didn't look at him as I slid the envelope into my bag, because looking would have made it personal. As the envelope sealed, the minute the countdown moved from quiet to inevitable. Pressure changes the shape of rooms, and by the time the clipboard with the incident log entered the story, everyone started standing where they thought they'd be safest. Past tense held steady. As I met Marcus near the side corridor, the clipboard tucked against his chest, like a shield, my immediate goal, narrowing to escalation without panic, introduce a witness strong enough to bend behavior without tipping the final drop. We've got a statement, Marcus said under his breath, and slid the clipboard into my hands. The paper was warm, newly written, the ink slightly uneven, where someone's hand had shaken while telling the truth. Who, I asked. Bartender, he replied. Saw the card refusal, heard the call, watched him move for the back corridor. The statement carried its own cost, a name willing to be attached, a time window described in relative terms, a location anchored cleanly at the bar rail where people gather to be seen. If this surfaces now, Marcus warned, it'll spook him. That's the point, I said, and felt the pressure ladder click up a rung. He appeared as if summoned by the word spook, eyes, sharp smile, recalibrated for control. What's this? He asked, nodding at the clipboard. An incident log, I said. Routine. Routine doesn't look like that, he said, and reached for it. I stepped back. Read it out loud, I said. The room should hear it. You're enjoying this, he accused, needle line precise. Keep smiling, your email header is on the screen, Marcus said. And the threat landed because it referenced a screen that existed whether anyone liked it or not. You think a bartender matters? He scoffed, eyes flicking to the doors. Witnesses matter, I replied, especially when they aren't looking for you. A couple lingered nearby, pretending to check messages, not pretending very well. "This is harassment," he said louder now, hoping volume would buy authority. "It's documentation," I said. "Different rules." He leaned in. "You're overplaying," he whispered. "Authority doesn't like games." "Authority likes timelines," I said, "and logs." The clipboard trembled slightly in my hands, not from fear, but from the accumulation of paper becoming leverage. Marcus murmured into his earpiece, ceding readiness without naming the moment, and I felt the cost as a tightening in my throat. This would not stay private. "You're cornered," he said suddenly, misreading the geometry. "No," I replied. "You are." A phone chimed nearby, someone recording without asking permission, and the awareness of it shifted his stance half an inch toward retreat. "We can fix this," he said, offering repair like a coupon. "You can stop," he added, aiming at me. "Stopping isn't neutral," I said. "It chooses a side." He exhaled sharply, jaw set. "You'll regret this," he said. "Regret doesn't change logs," I replied. The clipboard pressed into my forearm solid and ordinary, and I understood how witnesses become heavier than secrets. The statement dried as eyes gathered, and the room learned which side pressure prefers. He took a step back, recalculating, and I let him, because retreat reveals more than pursuit. As the log closed, authority leaned closer without entering. The audio recorder changed the geometry of the night the moment it left my bag. A small black rectangle with a red eye that doesn't care who deserves mercy, and my immediate goal hardened into one action: let contradiction speak in a voice that could not be argued down. Past tense kept me steady as I crossed the side aisle where the carpet muffled footsteps and conversations frayed into half-sentences, the room busy pretending nothing was happening while everyone waited for something to happen. "You don't want to do this," he said. When he saw the recorder in my hand, the words clipped managerial, as if authority could be conjured by tone. "Read the clause out loud," I replied, and felt the recorder's weight pull me into the present of it, even as the story stayed anchored in the past. Marcus hovered near the rack eyes up posture neutral, bound by protocol and time, while a small cluster of guests drifted closer without admitting why. "What is that?" a woman asked, curiosity sharpening into interest. "A recording," I said. "Of what?" "Of timing," I answered, and pressed play before he could find a better lie. His voice filled the narrow space, first calm, confident, familiar, saying, "I'll take the back corridor. It's faster," followed by a pause. Then another voice answering, "That door doesn't open for you," and then his laugh, soft, dismissive. "It will." The sound did what footage couldn't. It gave intention a pulse. "That's edited," he snapped, stepping forward. "Stop it. Keep smiling, your email header is on the screen," Marcus said, and the line landed because it braided sound to record. A man near the bar said, "Is that him?" and another replied, "That's his voice," certainty arriving without permission. He reached for the recorder, hand open, not violent but urgent. "Don't," I said, and took one step back, the distance exact. "You're not authorized," he said, needle line sharp. "Say it again, your title is analyst, not mine." "Your badge is blue," I replied, "and the room can hear." The recorder kept going unbothered, catching the end of the exchange where his voice drops and says, "Just log it later," a sentence that never survives daylight. Phones lifted. Someone whispered, "Oh," the syllables stretching like a verdict. "Turn that off." He ordered volume up now, hoping command would substitute for truth. "We're documenting," I said. "That's harassment," he said. "That's evidence," Marcus replied, and the correction mattered because it came from someone not in my story. The audio ended with a door latch clicking and his breath audible as he moved the smallest sounds, becoming decisive when played back. "You can't prove when he said pivoting, searching for the seam." "We don't need a clock," I said. "We need consistency." He laughed brittle again. "You think a tape beats a system?" "I think systems beat themselves when they lie," I answered. The room shifted, people stepping closer, then stopping the witness wave building without instruction. A coordinator whispered into a phone. Security adjusted at the doors, not entering, just letting their presence register as a possibility. He leaned toward me, voice low. "Private. You're making enemies," he said. I'm drawing lines, I replied. He straightened and tried for the room. This is a setup, he said loudly. She planned this. Procedure plans itself, I said, and felt the phrase land because it had already been tested. A woman near the aisle said, play it again, and someone else said, no, don't the room arguing with itself the way it does when truth arrives early. Read the log, Marcus said. Read it out loud. He shook his head. You don't get to decide, he said, pointing at me. Authority decides. Authority likes timelines, I replied. And recordings. The recorder warmed in my palm, the red eye steady, indifferent to his recalibration. The recorder spoke over him, and the room chose sound over status. His jaw tightened, calculation visible now. You've crossed a line, he said, and the threat tried to find gravity. Lines exist, I answered. Doors enforce them. A man at the back started recording openly. A woman said, this is insane, not leaving. Marcus murmured into his earpiece, seating the next step, without naming it, and the cost registered as a thinning. Behind my eyes, this was the point of no quiet return. We can settle this privately, he offered soft or late. Privacy costs more, I said. The recorder clicked off the sudden silence louder than sound, and the absence made space for what everyone had already decided they heard. He took a step back, then another glancing toward exits that had learned his timing. When the recorder went dark, the contradictions stayed lit and the room leaned forward. By the time the time-stamped CCTV still entered the frame, the night had narrowed into a corridor with no side doors left to pretend about. Past tense held me in the careful calm as Marcus pulled the still from the system and printed it, the image sharp enough to feel accusatory. My immediate goal shifting from revelation to containment, corner him without letting the room fracture into chaos. The still showed the same restricted hallway, the same shoulder angle, the same door edge catching light, but this time the metadata strip beneath it mattered more than the picture itself, the timestamp refusing to harmonize with the email header and the audio we'd already played. This is harassment, he said louder now, hoping repetition would make it law. It's documentation, I replied, and watched a few people nod as if grateful for the word. Marcus held the still up, careful not to block sight lines. This frame was captured at the venue entrance, he said. Same corridor, different minute. Minutes don't matter, he snapped. They do when you lie about them, I said. Read the log, he barked at Marcus. Read the whole thing. We will, Marcus replied, after you stop interrupting. A woman near the bar whispered, Is that the same door? And someone answered yes, with the confidence of a witness who has decided. He stepped closer to me, lowering his voice. You think this ends well for you? He said. You're an analyst, he added, needle line precise. This is above your pay grade. Grades don't unlock doors, I said. Consistency does. He scoffed and turned to the room. This image proves nothing, he announced. Images don't speak. They do when they line up, Marcus said, and pinned the still beside the earlier clip, the two refusing to agree on time, the way truth refuses to agree with a story built on shortcuts. I felt the pressure register as heat along my neck. People leaned forward, phones steady now, not hiding. That seat number isn't yours, someone muttered, misreading the situation but landing close enough to sting. Keep smiling. Your email header is on the screen, Marcus added, and the cruelty of specificity landed because it named a header everyone had already seen. He reached for the still. Take that down, he said. You're not authorized. You signed the log earlier than this, I replied. The camera contradicts you. The sentence moved through the room like a ruler snapping. He froze, recalculated, then tried a new angle. Fine, he said. You want paper? He pulled out his phone, fingers flying. We'll do this by counsel. We are, I said, and held up the draft legal notice Rachel had sent minutes earlier, the language clean, procedural, merciless in its calm. What is that? He asked, eyes narrowing. A notice, I replied. Drafted, not filed. You don't have standing, he said. Read the clause out loud, I answered. The room should hear it. He laughed, brittle. You think a draft corners me? I think it tells you where the walls are, I said. Security shifted of the doors, a choreography that didn't need orders. Someone whispered, "Is he leaving?" Another voice replied, "He can't." The still sat between us like a map no one wanted to admit they recognized. "This is a witch hunt," he said, trying volume again. "It's a timeline," I replied. "And it's complete." The legal notice trembled slightly in my hand, not from doubt, but from the accumulation of proof becoming heavy. Marcus murmured into his earpiece a single sentence that didn't include names, just readiness. I felt the corner lock into place, not with force, but with alignment. The still pinned him to a minute he couldn't move, and the room felt the walls close. He exhaled, hard eyes, flicking to the projector screen that still waited blue and patient, like it knew what was coming. "You won't dare," he said to me low. "Watch me follow procedure," I replied, and the future tense finally felt earned. As the image refused to blink away, the exit stopped being an option. The second public scene began when the bright stage spotlight came up all at once. Not dramatic, just thorough, and the room learned what it feels like to be seen without shadows to hide in. Past tense tightened into clarity. As Marcus nodded to the lighting tech, my immediate goal narrowing to a single action, make the final truth undeniable before anyone with a badge could move. The projector screen bloomed from blue to white, and the projected financial ledger appeared clean and unarguable rows, aligned columns, locked the kind of order that only exists when someone has stopped lying to the system. "You can't show that," he said too late, stepping forward as the first numbers settled into place. "That's confidential." "It's masked," I replied, "and authorized." The ledger showed transfers halted mid-attempt, the same masked account ending in 82, repeating like a refrain, the timestamps lining up with the access logs and the audio in a way that refused coincidence. A murmur ran through the room, not laughter this time, but recognition. "Is that someone began?" "Yes," another answered, and the certainty spread faster than rumor. "Turn it off," he ordered louder now, pointing at Marcus. "Read the clause out loud," I said into the open space, not the mic, trusting the acoustics. "The room should hear it." He shook his head, jaw tight. "This is a setup," he said, trying again for volume. She planned it. "Procedure plans itself," I replied, and watched the phrase land because the ledger kept speaking. The witness wave rolled whispers to silence to the scrape of chairs as people stood for a clearer view. Phones rose openly now, screens glowing like a constellation. "You signed the log earlier than this," Marcus said, calmly gesturing to the projected row. "The camera contradicts you." "That's not proof," he snapped. "It's data," Marcus replied, "which is better." He took a step back, recalculating, then lunged for the podium. Security moved, not rushing, just occupying space, and the velvet rope barrier became a line no one crossed. "Please remain where you are," Marcus said, voice steady. "You don't get to do this," he said to me, eyes searching for leverage. "Authority decides. Authority arrives after proof." I answered, and felt the room hold its breath. The ledger advanced one page, the final entry highlighted, and the truth landed with a dull finality, the attempted drain, the freeze confirmation, the internal authorization trail that tied his credentials to the attempt without mercy. Someone said, "Oh my God," softly like a prayer. "This is illegal," he said, grasping. "It's lawful," I replied, "and documented." The spotlight held him in clean light as a uniformed officer stepped into the doorway, badge glinting once before settling the timing exact because it had been earned. "Sir," the officer said, neutral and loud enough to carry, "we need you to remain here." On what grounds, he demanded. "Read the notice," the officer replied, gesturing to the screen and then to the sealed authority folder at his side. The room went quiet in a way that felt permanent. He looked at me, then really looked calculation stripped away. "You did this," he said. "I followed procedure," I replied, and meant every word. The officer stepped closer. "Please put your phone down," he said, and waited until compliance arrived. The spotlight dimmed just enough to feel human again, but the ledger stayed bright, refusing to be unseen. When the ledger filled the screen and the badge caught the light, denial lost its last witness. Applause didn't come. Something steadier replaced it, a collective exhale that felt like justice without celebration. As the spotlight held and the doors stayed closed, The truth stood where no exit could reach. Payoff doesn't arrive like relief. It arrives like paperwork that finally tells the truth out loud. Past tense steadied into something colder as the USB drive in the evidence bag was placed on the table between Rachel the officer and me, the plastic crinkling softly, as if to remind everyone that consequences are often ordinary objects doing extraordinary work. My immediate goal was execution, not emotion. Close the loop cleanly so nothing could be misread as revenge. "We'll proceed," the officer said, voice neutral, and the neutrality mattered more than comfort. Rachel nodded and slid the drive forward. "This contains the compiled record," she said, "logs, footage, audio, and authorization trail." He watched it move like it might bite. "You don't have the right," he said, reflexive now, a habit without leverage. "Read the notice out loud," Rachel replied, and the request landed because it came from a voice designed to carry weight. The officer opened the evidence bag, verified the seal, and logged the handoff with a practiced motion that stripped drama from the moment without stripping meaning. "You're being formally advised," the officer said, and the words moved the room from witness to record. Phones stayed up, but quieter now, like people understood this part was not for them. "This is excessive," he said, eyes darting. "It's proportional," Rachel replied, "and documented." The USB drive disappeared into a case, the click of the latch, precise final. I felt the motif resolve begin not as triumph, but as alignment doorways fully lit, so no one could pretend about thresholds anymore. "You'll regret this," he said to me softer than before. An attempt at intimacy after authority had entered. "Regret doesn't undo harm," I replied. "It just delays repair." A few people began to leave, the energy shifting from spectacle to aftermath, acknowledgement replacing curiosity. The officer guided him a step to the side. Not rough, not kind, just certain. "Your badge is blue," the officer said, glancing at it once. "Mine is cleared." The needle line landed because it inverted the language he'd used all night. He opened his mouth, then closed it, the habit finally broken. Rachel touched my elbow lightly. "It's done," she said, and the phrase felt heavier than celebration. We stepped away from the stage, past the glass podium, now dimmed past the velvet rope that had done its quiet work. In the corridor, the lights were even, no splits, no tricks, and I realized the system had returned to neutrality, the kind that only arrives after a correction. The USB drive traveled where it needed to go, the ledger where it belonged, and the room exhaled without applause because this wasn't entertainment. When the case latched and the badge yielded, the payoff landed without needing noise. I stood for a moment longer, listening to the building settle, and felt the strange calm of knowing the story had reached its hinge. As the evidence left the room, the doorway stayed lit and refused to dim. The present returns quietly, the way buildings do after witnesses leave, and I find myself back at the glass podium where the night began, hands resting on its cool edge, as if it remembers more than it reflects. The lobby is calmer now, present tense smoothing the sharpest corners, and my immediate goal is simple and final leave without carrying what no longer belongs to me. Morning light presses evenly through the entrance doors. No half shadows, no uneven glow, the doorway fully lit in a way that makes pretending impossible. Staff move with practiced normalcy, resetting chairs, wiping surfaces, the small rituals that erase spectacle while preserving record. Someone nods at me, not gratitude, not apology, just acknowledgement, and that feels right. I hear the hum of the projector being powered down somewhere behind the wall, the sound thinner. Now work completed, and I think about how much weight that hum carried when it mattered. The officer's card sits on the podium for a second as paperwork is finalized, then disappears into a pocket authority, folding itself back into procedure. "You're clear," Rachel had said earlier, voice steady, and the clarity arrives now like a fact I can finally stand on without bracing. I check my phone once, not for messages from him. There are none, but to confirm the quiet. No alerts, no flags, no tremors under the surface. The glass reflects my face without distortion, eyes level, posture unremarkable, and I'm grateful for the ordinariness of it. A coordinator approaches. "Do you need anything before you go?" she asks. No, I say. Everything's handled. Understanding passes between us without detail. Outside, the air is cooler, and the doors open smoothly when I push no resistance, no delay, the mechanism doing exactly what it's designed to do. I pause on the threshold anyway, habit lingering, and notice how the light meets the floor in a single unbroken band. The motif completes itself without ceremony. Access, clarified timing, aligned visibility, no longer negotiable. I don't replay the night in my head. I let it file where it belongs, with records and receipts, not with dreams. Across the street, people move toward coffee and work, unaware of how close the room came to lying to them, and that feels like a victory that doesn't need an audience. I think about how often love teaches us to mistrust our instruments and how systems, when used cleanly, can teach us to trust them again. The glass podium catches one last slice of light as I step away, reflection thinning, until it's just another surface doing its job. I walk toward my car without looking back, present tense, holding firm breath, even shoulders loose. The doorway stands fully lit now, and nothing inside it pretends not to see.